Hello, everyone. This is your second lecture of week 3 for business writing. Today, we're going to get into the specifics of proposal writing. You'll notice on Canvas, you have a proposal assignment. This is the lecture that will cover the structure I want you to practice with. And this is what I'll be looking for as far as completion on the assignment goes. So keep that in mind, and I will bring up the lecture here. So as you can see, this person is not doing proposal writing, but I have done an interesting and exciting lecture in the past about how art can be proposals, but maybe we'll save that for another day. But the structure of a proposal is fairly simple. You have an introduction, you have an assessment of the current situation, you have your proposed solution, you have financial considerations and counterarguments, and you have conclusions. Each of these sections can be probably from 2 to 3 paragraphs long. The proposed solution may be just one, and the conclusion may be just one. But the other ones, you want to be speaking at length, so you really cover a lot of ground, and I'll show you how to do that. So with proposal introduction, the first thing you want to do is set the stage for the problem. When are people having this problem, and where are people having this problem? You can think about this in terms of the 5 W's as well, right? The who, what, where, when, and why. You want to identify the stakeholders. That's the who. Is this a problem that's specific to you? Is it a problem that's specific to your department? Is it a problem that's for everyone at the university? Is it a problem for everyone in the world? There's no limit on who you can address with a proposal, but you want to make sure you are identifying who those stakeholders are in your writing. You should have some kind of argument in the introduction about why your problem that you've identified deserves attention. In other words, in organizations, in business places, you'll find that, organizations have lots of different problems and lots of different things going on. So why has this thing that you've addressed deserve our attention right now, and for me to read the rest of this proposal? And keep in mind the audience centeredness. We talked about that in the first week of this course, but proposals should be really, really audience centered, because especially in the introduction, because again, just because you're having a problem doesn't mean everyone has it. Just because you understand it doesn't mean everyone understands it. So make sure you're really keeping in mind who your audience might be and how they might come to understand your problem the way you want them to understand it. Next, you should have an assessment of the current situation. The best piece of advice I can give you for this section would be to be vivid. You can even use personal encounters with the problem or the way the problem has affected your life, which is a really good way to be vivid, because then the reader at least is experiencing it through your eyes, but also consider other points of view beyond your personal ones. Could you explain somebody else maybe who has the problem? And so include those too. Address the urgency of the problem. So this kind of continues the conversation from the introduction of why does this problem deserve attention? Now we get a little bit more into, well, wait a second. Okay, we're paying attention, but why should this be at the top of our list? And that's what you want to be thinking about during your assessment of the current situation section. And lastly, you could always address previous efforts to solve the problem. Are you doing something novel and new? Has this been tried before? All things to consider. Your proposed solution, like I said, this should probably be just 1 paragraph, but this is where you can include that kind of thesis statement kind of idea of, hey, A should do B because of C. In your assignment, I'm going to ask you to make a proposal about the University of Delaware community. So A will probably be University of Delaware should do what because of Y. So you, essentially at root, what you're doing is connecting the claim, A should do B, back to the problem. So you have those previous 2 sections where you've given an assessment of the problem, you've introduced the problem, and now you're connecting that, hey, why should A do B, to all that stuff that I described a second ago. If you want to think a little bit deeper about it, you can go back to the structures of arguments that I introduced last week in my lecture on rhetoric and business writing. But I think the simplest one, or the best one to be thinking about here, is the Toulmin argument, which introduced us to the terms claim, data, and warrant, where essentially, okay, I'm going to make some claim now, A should do B. My data in this case is probably going to be your personal story or your engagement with the problem. And how am I now going to tie these two things together, and that'll be your warrant. And so that's probably the best structure to revisit. But again, this is the section that could maybe be just about one paragraph. After that, you want to get into financial considerations and counter arguments. All proposals should contain financial considerations. I've always had this proposal in mind that we should move Memorial Hall from the center of campus, but financially it's never feasible. And so this proposal would never work. And so this is something you want to consider in your deliverable for the proposal assignment. You should consider causal arguments, which means, hey, if I'm making a change, what other things will this cause? So you're kind of going one step out from your proposal. For example, if you're saying that UD should fund, let's say, the English department more or something like that, you'll have to consider the outcomes of that, right? What other things will that cause? Well, other departments will be looking and saying, well, why can't we have more finances or more money for our department? And so those are all kinds of causal things you should consider. But yeah, if we do take this step, what are going to be the outcomes of that are beyond the positive stuff you're maybe thinking? Most financial arguments are going to have pushback just because a lot of the workforce is just change averse. And so you'll want to address those counter arguments in your paper as well. So yeah, for example, if we said something again, like I proposed that we fund the English department better, and somebody said, well, everything's already working so well at the university, here in the counter argument section, you should be addressing maybe what that person could say. Lastly, you'll have a conclusion. I think the most important thing a conclusion should do for a proposal is present an idealized picture of the future. And so, hey, if this thing gets done, what is the story of campus going to look like in the future? The story of our organization going to look like in the future? And that brings us back to a term that came up last week as well, and that's logos. There's two kinds of logos: facts that are inartistic, which are things like numbers, research, data. But there's also artistic logos, where now you're taking some change and you're dreaming up the facts that might be the case, that might occur if you can achieve all of these things. And so this relies heavily on artistic logos, which could also probably be tied to pathos and the emotions as well. But those are the parts of the proposal. That's what I'm going to be looking for in the deliverable for this week. You'll notice what I'm going to do is break it down into sections on Canvas. So you'll do a couple of these sections this week, receive some feedback, and then finish things up next week. But thanks for your time, and we'll have one more very brief lecture this week on business proposals. Just to build out these sections a little bit, if we had a 15-week course, I think we would go a little bit more into the sections of the business proposal. But since this is the 5-week, we'll stick with these core sections. But in the next lecture, I'll describe other sections you might look out for in business proposals, and then yeah, I'll do a little bit with quotables and sound bites. So thanks, everyone.